It's time for todaysstocks.com with host Pat Bolland.
Galway Metals is a gold and zinc exploration company in Canada and trades under the symbol GWM. And Larry Strauss is the VP of Corporate Development, and he joins us now. Larry, a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you as well, Pat, and thanks for having me on.
Tell me a little bit more about Galway.
Well, Galway has two projects. We've got the Clarence Stream project in southwest New Brunswick. It's a gold project. And then we have the Estrada Project in the northern Abitibi of western Quebec. That's a polymetallic project, so it contains a suite of 5 different metals. It was a spinout from Galway Resources, which our CEO, Rob Hinchcliffe, founded in 2005. Mike Sutton and I joined Rob in 2009, and we were able to build that company from a market cap of $5 million in 2009 to $340 million when we were taken out by Ike Batista back at the end of 2012. So Galway Metals is a spin out, as well as our sister company, Galway Gold, from that transaction. Shareholders also received shares in the 2 spin-out companies, Galway Metals and Galway Gold, and $310 million in cash from that transaction. The other 30 from that 340 went to fund the 2 spin-out companies.
Okay, so shareholders did pretty well. Means you've got a good story. Tell me about these 2 deposits, though. Clarence Stream first.
Okay, well, Clarence Stream, we have basically the best land package you could have asked for in New Brunswick. We were pretty much the first movers in that province. If you want gold in New Brunswick, we're pretty well the only game in town. We have a 60,000 hectare, 65 kilometer long land position. We've had tremendous success since the beginning days of our exploration program. When we acquired the project back in August of 2016, it had a resource of 430,000 ounces. A year later, we drilled for a year, and a year later we updated that resource to about 670,000 ounces. We haven't updated the resource since, and we've drilled an additional 110,000 meters or so since then. Now, what's important is that we've made many discoveries since that 2017 resource, and what we're going to do in the upcoming resource later this quarter is put those new deposits into the resource. So we started with the south and the north zones, and then we moved on and we found the George Murphy zone, we found the Adrian zone, we found the Richard zone, and in conjunction with the Jubilee, and those are all along a 3-kilometer trend, we're going to put those new deposits into resource. What's also remarkable is the success we've had at finding new deposits. We've made 6 discoveries at Clarence Stream. 4 of them occurred with the very first hole drilled in the area. The 5th occurred with the second hole drilled in the area. And that last one, it took about a dozen holes, but that 12th hole yielded 186 grams per ton. So we've had quite a lot of success drilling at Clarence Stream.
You know, Larry, I looked at the history of this particular project, and there was, for a few years, only 1 drill on the property. And now you're up to, I think, a half a dozen or so. What are your plans for this year? Are you fleshing out the deposit or what? Well,
good question. We did drill with only 1 rig for the first 3 out of the 5 years we've owned it. Now we are up to 6 rigs, you're right. And that means we could do in 6 months what took us 3 years to do. And that's pretty good. We're going a lot faster, particularly given the successes we've had to date. We don't see an end in sight. We think we're at the bottom of the first inning in terms of drilling here. We're planning a 150,000 meter drill program in 2022 and 2023. And that compares with the 2020-21 program of 100,000 meters just completed. We're looking to expand the known zone, so all the 6 deposits that are going into the upcoming resource are still wide open for expansion, so we're going to be looking to do that. We've made 3 other discoveries that are not going to be in this resource. Well, there was a limited amount that we could do. So we made the discoveries, but there's only a limited amount of drilling done on each of them. So we're going to be looking to expand them. And then we're going to be making additional new discoveries. We have targets that are better. The evidence for gold discovery is better in some of these targets than any of the discoveries made to date. We're also going to be doing metallurgical testing and ore sorting tests. There's preliminary metallurgical work having been done on the south and the north zones. Over 90% recoveries were achieved, but those were only preliminary results. We're going to look to improve on those as well as testing the new zones.
It's interesting too that as I read through the material, you were finding, or you were hopeful for finding more material at depth. Is that what is in part why you've really juiced up the drilling program?
Honestly, not really. There's so much near surface mineralization to discover and to expand on. So these are open along strike, shallowly along strike. They're open laterally and they're open to depth. But bang for your buck, we think it's probably smarter to drill shorter holes, cheaper holes, than to start drilling deep at Clarence Stream. There is a bit of a difference between Clarence Stream and Estrada, where some of our targets are deep, and we'll get to that as we go through the program.
Absolutely, and that's a good business decision. Let's talk about that project in Quebec, Estrada, then, because it has a long history of mining success, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. It was discovered by Teck back in the 70s. It was put into production by Breakwater in the 1990s. So it's a former producing mine. This is elephant country where Estrada is located. We have three mineralized horizons to explore. And that's not just, me saying it. There are actually 5 mines either on or off of our property with at least one mine on each of those 3 horizons, either on our property, east of our property, or west of our property. We're basically surrounded by various mines. So to the north, is the Casa Berardi break. Along that break, approximately 10 million ounces of gold between historic production and current resource has been found. You've got Hecla to our west, and you've got the Agnico Maple joint venture to our east. So we've got 2 major companies sitting between us, and we have a 30-kilometer, 20,000 hectare land position sitting right there. Now, the Estrada horizon, where all of our resources located, as I said earlier, is polymetallic. So we've got gold, silver, zinc, copper, and lead in that resource. It's normal for this type of deposit to have multiple metals, and what's unusual about it is that it has a very high precious metals content. Normally, it's much higher percentage in zinc and copper than it is in gold and silver, but here, precious metals is actually more abundant than the zinc and copper and lead in terms of value of metal in the ground. When we acquired
I was under the impression, as I read the material, that you were actually looking for a copper-rich vent. Is that you look for copper first, and then you hope you have the other contents there?
Well, the copper-rich vent has to do with the fact that when we hit a source vents tend to be richer in copper. The resource itself is more dominant in gold and zinc as it sits today, but there's zonation within the deposit. And what we're doing is we're following the geophysics to depth because we have very good signatures at depth with the geophysics, both on the east side and the west side of the resource at Estrada. One of the most important holes that we drilled is about a kilometer down, and we're looking for the copper-rich source vent, and typically you'll get the other metals with the copper. That hole isn't so important because of the amount of metal it contained, but rather it's important because it was a 24-meter wide massive sulfide, and that's what this kind of deposit is. It's a massive sulfide. Now, that 24 meters is important because the resource drill intersects are roughly between 2 and 7 meters wide. As you approach and hit a source vent, the mineralization, the sulfides tend to get wider. Now, that 1 kilometer down is the deepest intersect anywhere on the property, and it's also the widest. So we're very encouraged by that. And that hole did contain up to 11% zinc and a gram gold. It didn't contain the copper. We were surprised, but we could just be on the edge of something quite significant there.
Wow. two exciting potential projects. Tell me a little bit more about management.
Sure. Our CEO, Rob Hinchcliffe, founded the company, as I said earlier, or our predecessor company, Galway Resources. He guided us to that $340 million takeout. He was also chief financial officer at Kirkland Lake. He was a Wall Street analyst covering both North American and Latin American mining stocks. And lately, in fact, all throughout the Galway Metals days, he's been consistently buying Galway Metals shares in the marketplace, underscoring his and our whole team's belief in what we're doing. He owns about 15 million shares, and Galway insiders in our family in total own about 21% of the company. So it really does demonstrate a strong belief in what we're doing. Mike Sutton is another key person I'd like to highlight. He's an absolutely terrific exploration geologist. He's been involved in 5 takeouts over the last 10 or so years. He's currently a director of Rupert Resources, having guided that company from a market cap of about 50 million a year ago to $1 billion today. He discovered Kirkland Lake's very high-grade South Mine Complex. That created billions of dollars of value for shareholders. And he won Prospector of the Year for Ontario at the PDAC. So we've got a pretty strong team that we're building Galway Metals with.
Larry, if I were an investor, what would I key off of for the coming year in 2022 in terms of key developments I should watch for?
Well, as I mentioned, we're going to be updating the Clarence stream resource this quarter. It's going to be a snapshot in time. As I mentioned, all 6 deposits are open for expansion. So with our drill program, we have a 3-pronged approach. We're going to be expanding the known deposits, those that are going to be in the resource, because as I say, they're all open. We haven't reached the limits on any of them. We're going to be expanding the 3 discoveries that we've made, which are not going to be in resource, and we're looking to make additional discoveries. At Estrades, our primary focus is to find that source vent below the existing resource. That could just be the smoke to something much richer and greater at depth. And to put that in perspective, Agnico Eagle's flagship mine, the mine that put him on the map, is LaRonde. That's sitting south of us in Quebec. And it doesn't start until 800 meters, and it goes down over 3 kilometers today. So there's a lot of depth potential in these things. If you look across the border on the Ontario side, you've got Kidd Creek going down 3 kilometers. If you look at Matagami, where all the ore was trucked when Estrada was in production, they have the smoke that they mine, just as we have the smoke that was mined near surface, but their best stuff was between 1 kilometer or 1.4 kilometers down. So there's a lot of upside there. If we hit, that could be a home run or even a grand slam for the company. We're also looking for a new deposit down at Newiska. There are 3 former mines just to the east, and we're looking to see if we can find another one on that Newiska ground. So stay tuned for that.
Indeed, we shall, Larry. And let's hope that where there's smoke, there's fire. Larry, thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot, Pat.